Morning to those in the Americas. Good afternoon to those in Europe. Thank you for joining us today in our first meeting for the Emerging Leaders Group of this year. It is great to see that we have so many people in this meeting. I'm Maria de los Ríos. I'm a lawyer from Colombia. I work at Lloreda, Camacho, the Bogata law firm. It is great to see you all, and today we have two great speakers, Shannon Clark and Gelu Goran. They are partners from two different law firms, one in the US and one in Bucharest, and they will share their experiences on, I think, their road to partnership and how should we emerging leaders prepare for partnership and interesting tips on that. The reason we are having this conversation is because in the 2021 AGM, many emerging leaders said they found it complicated or to become a partner or to have the partnership talk when you don't know what partnership implies. Like, you know, most of the things partnership implies, for instance, bringing new clients and so on, but maybe the most administrative stuff, you're not so interested in it or you don't know much of it. So Shannon and Joe agreed to discuss this with us and share their experiences, which are very different, but I think we will get a lot from it. So welcome, Shannon, Gelu, and I don't know if you guys want to introduce yourselves to the group.
I'll start. My name is Shannon Clark. I'm with Gallagher and Kennedy. We are a mid-sized firm in Phoenix, Arizona. Currently, we have, I think, 66 or 67 attorneys. That number always fluctuates a little bit. We have been as large as a little over 100 attorneys at one point, but we've contracted a little bit in the last couple of years. We're now kind of in a growth mode again, but being in Phoenix, we're very kind of vulnerable to the ups and downs of the real estate market. So when the real estate work kind of gets a little slow, we contracted a little bit, particularly in 2008 with the last big recession. My road to partnership was, I had worked out of law school for a federal judge for a year doing a clerkship. My firm gave me credit for that year, but I joined the firm sort of internally with a sense of really wanting to be a hard charging individual and make partner as quickly as I could. So I was able to do that in about 5 years, which is early by United States standards. But I think that, you know, some of the lessons I learned about what you do and what not to do along the way were really helpful in my pursuit of that. So looking forward to sharing some of those experiences with you today.
Thank you, Shannon.
I'm Gelu Goran from Biriş Goran. We are a mid-sized Bucharest, Romania law firm, which was set up, I think, 16 years ago. We are 10 partners, probably 40 plus fee earners. As the case of Shannon's firm, I think we grew up quite fast from 2006 to all the way to 2010. Then because of the crisis, I think we plateaued a little bit, and now we are developing and adding new associates and new hires. And I think probably we'll continue to grow slowly in the next few years. In terms of what we do our bread and butter of obviously like real estate, competition work, tax, and corporate M&A and financing. I think we decided quite time ago just to focus on this main areas, not to expand in some other practice because it's difficult to grow and deliver the same quality of the product. In terms of my particular road to partnership, it's a very strange one. I out of law school in Bucharest. I joined the local monopoly authority. I worked there for 2 years, and then I was poached by an American law firm in Bucharest. This was late 90s, in fact. I worked for them for 4 years. To be very frank with you, I did not even imagine I would become a partner, because the mere fact of working for American law firm in Bucharest, back then it was like hitting the jackpot and being and really making a difference and being successful in your career plans. And I stayed with this American firm for, I think, all the way to 2006, with 1 year studying in Chicago for LLM degree as a Fulbright fellow. I returned. I realized I can do more, I can do better, I can do faster. And I decided with 3 of my senior colleagues in that firm, which is now it's called Dentons, it was Silence back then. I decided to set up our own firm. And this is how I became a partner. So there's no, somehow I cut the stages. It was a shortcut, and by defecting and setting up our own shop, our own firm, we became partners. And when we became partners, I think we're not totally fully prepared for this. I'll be very frank with you guys. There are lots of things which you learn by doing. There's lots of trial and error processes. It was fun. It's still nerve-wracking, still time-consuming, but this is how we done it. And we'll take questions, me and Shannon, from all of you guys whenever you want, on whatever topics you might think it might be interesting to see our input or our comments.
Great, thank you. So I think maybe that partnership road for you two was kind of different. As
Yeah.
Gelu said, you hit the jackpot and became a partner at your law firm after some years in the business, because you started working with an American law firm, and that was great. And in the case of Shannon, I understand you just, like, your firm just took your work as a clerk at a court, and that was great. But even though I share what Gelu says, that you just learn on the road, I think maybe there are some skills or knowledge that you found it helpful when, like, now that you're a partner, you realize that was helpful before becoming a partner. So what are those skills that you think or knowledge that you think a younger lawyer should acquire or should develop before becoming a partner?
I can start. We can toggle back and forth.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. I think there are a few universal things that would apply to everybody. Even within the U.S., which I'm much more familiar with how law firms function here. But even within the U.S., there are many different models of partnership and what that looks like. Some firms have 2-3 tiers of partnerships. Some have multiple tiers of associateship. But it is always true that one way you can give yourself the best chance of making partner is to become a very good lawyer. And it kind of goes without saying. I think it's obvious that everybody wants to be the best lawyer they can be, but where I see people be very successful, and it seems to be a common trait in the lawyers who end up becoming partner, is that they aren't just doing a good job with the work that is put in front of them. They're making a conscious effort to grow and to be available for other people's work and to learn from that experience and figure out ways to add value. If I give work to an associate at my firm, I expect that it's going to be done in a timely fashion, with good quality, and it's going to be thorough. But what I don't always expect, but I like to see, is when the younger lawyer has put some thought into the purpose of the project, or something that really I may not have thought about because I've got tunnel vision, or I've spent a lot of time thinking about it in a particular way. So someone who can bring a different perspective and who isn't shy about volunteering that perspective, those things really do distinguish people. And I think that becomes important because when it gets to time to figure out who's going to become a partner and whether someone is going to be invited to join the firm as a partner, you want to be valuable and to set yourself apart in that way. And that's just a very, I won't say easy way to distinguish yourself, but it's something where you can a little bit of extra effort goes a long way in that setting. We can talk more about, developing relationships and business and things like that. But to me, the concept of really trying to figure out where you fit and how you can add value to the law firm is a huge thing that sets younger lawyers apart from each other, from what I have seen.
Yes, well, if bringing some Romanian perspective into this, obviously, I mean, you need to have the skills, the legal talent to become a partner. You need to nurture your skills and develop them. But once you near partnership, you need to get some of the set of skills which are really, really important, especially in, let's say, in small or mid-sized firms, where human interaction is key for the well-being and the health of the firm. And in terms of management, I think what one of the difficulties which we're still meeting and trying to deal with ourselves and also with the other partners is just to get the new partners to adjust the new balance of management and pure practice of law. Because some of them, I mean, are very ambitious, but they really want to work, and they see being a partner mostly being getting the things done, getting the projects done, making things the client is happy, but they're not that willing to spend time in trying to do things which are less tangible, but which are really key for the well-being of the firm as a whole. And there's lots of time spent on mentorship, on interacting. We're lucky enough to have, let's say, to have some sort of a not a multi-layer firm. So we interact quite a lot with partners, with the junior associates and paralegals, and we give them feedback whenever and to the largest extent possible, because the more able we are to translate our set of skills or knowledge to them, it's going to be easier for them to be able to step up and then progress on the way to becoming a partner. But it's difficult because we have different schools of different approaches on in terms of what takes to be a good partner. And some of my partners, for instance, are spending so much time on dealing mostly with client work, and also the mentorship and all these things, but they're less willing to spend time on getting the firm to work and function, because there are so many processes behind which you do not quite really see them in terms of marketing, employment, planning, HR, lots of things which need to be solved. And I mean, maybe it's our bad choice, but we have a capable office manager, but you cannot really rely on the office manager to make the ship sail properly. You need to spend partner time in addressing those issues, especially in terms of planning and budgeting and thinking things forward. But it's like Shannon somehow mentioned. I don't think it's there's no one size fits all solution for how to become a good partner. There's always the structure of the firm is always has an impact on the partnership features you need and the skills you need, because like as mentioned by Shannon, we have several types of partnership arrangements. We have an equity partnership. We have also salary partners, and obviously the load in terms of managing the firm, the rest with the equity partners, and while the salary partners which aspire to become equity partners, they are more hands-on in projects and client matters, and less on the managing the firm. And I think this more or less explains, more or less it's what I'm trying to add to the discussion here.
I think one thing that really does help, and I certainly didn't do this when I was coming up, and I had a lot of surprises because of that, is, when you make partner, there's a little bit of a veil that gets lifted. You become privy to a lot more information about the firm in terms of the economics and things like that. And I don't know why, at least in the US, it seems to be the culture that information is not shared with associates very often. But we have taken another look at that recently because, I think it's helpful for associates to know generally what's going to be expected of them financially when they're shareholders, both on the upside and the downside. What can they hope to achieve financially? but also, what do the firm's economics look like? Is it a type of firm that takes a lot of collections and profit from younger attorneys to, reward the attorneys who grew the law firm and have been practicing for a long time or who have the clients? Or is it a firm where you get, most of what you bring in? And so your strategy can be different depending on what those economics are. And some firms have kind of hybrid models, but, I think to the extent it's possible for younger lawyers to try to get information about, what the firm economics look like, that is really helpful. Some firms are pretty guarded with that information. We've recently we made the decision that we're going to send profit sheets to associates so they can see, the math of how the law firm works. There's a wave in the US, but Phoenix in particular now, where salaries for associates are climbing, which is, it seems like productivity has gone down generally and salaries have gone up. So there's a math problem that is not sustainable long-term. But one thing that we are doing is trying to invest the associates with, look, we'll pay you more money, but you need to understand, here's how those dollars get spent. There's a dollar sign that gets attached to your salary. There's a dollar sign that gets attached to the benefits that the firm pays for you. There's a dollar sign that gets attached to an overhead allocation. And then, there's a dollar sign that gets attached to your collections, and you subtract the stuff in the black from the stuff in the red, and there's a number there. And so I think, though, I was very surprised just recently to learn that most associates didn't really have any appreciation for how our overhead structure worked, what the firm has to pay just to, pay for the computers and the building and all those types of things. And so I think, law firms having more transparency with that would be helpful to associates, because I think, if younger lawyers understand the business side of the law and what the numbers look like, I think it helps, understand a little bit more about, maybe I do need to put a little extra effort into this and, figure out how I can add some value to the firm and contribute to that. And again, going back to the theme of, trying to distinguish yourself and add some value, that's one way I think you could do that.
Yes, I think the question of transparency is something which is, I think it's maybe this issue in most jurisdictions. Our firm is not that transparent. I mean, we're more transparent in terms of the economics in the firm, the benefits and cost, and the numbers only towards those senior associates which are in partnership. And they realize, and sometimes they're surprised to realize that it's not that easy. There's so much money spent on overhead and costs and the like. But they get used to it and then they adjust. In terms of the mid-level associates or junior associates, I think the only times when we let's say we raise this veil and let them understand is when we discuss year-end performance. We look at the number of billable hours per year. We look at the target and see what went wrong, what went good. And this is somehow indirectly realize that it's those billable numbers and billable hours are not put there just for the sake of giving them a hard time, but for the sake of having the firm working properly, because we spend like probably 1/3, maybe more than 1/3 on salaries, and then a lot of money on the overhead. And at the end of the day, there's not that much amount of money which is left in the bank before that, all these expenses. What we're trying to educate somehow financially our associates, we do have a system of bonuses, and we try to incentivize them to bring clients and to develop clients, and once in a while we award them on clients being brought by them. Culturally speaking, I think the expectations in Romanian or probably even also East European countries that the partners are bringing the clients, and the partners are also working on clients while the associates are simply doing the work. And we're trying to change this. And some of our associates got it, and they understand that the more they get to be more visible on the market, they are part of, let's say, solid leadership in particular practices, the more they're going to be likely to be on the fast track for promotion, for getting to be a partner. So this helps a little bit, this transparency. But I think what Shannon's firm is doing, I think it's something which really helps them to have a intimate direct view of the inner workings, financial workings of the law firm, which are complex and and sometimes frustrating, sometimes really generous, but they're complex for sure.
Yeah, I think that that was one of the key points that the emerging leaders brought in the latest AGM, that they felt that they didn't know enough of the firm when they became partners. Like, you just knew the surface of it, but not the insides. And that's something we all would like to know. But Shannon, I think what you said about what your law firm is doing is very interesting, but I wonder, how was the road to that? Because I understand there has been a raise in salaries for associates and so on, and I'm guessing that that was part of it. But how was that, like, how willing were the partners to share this information? Because maybe I think that that's a problem, and I don't know if this is part of this conversation, but I think it will be interesting to know how did you got to that decision?
Well, I would like to say that we were a very progressive law firm and, saw this issue coming down the pike and were very proactive. But the truth is, the salaries in some of our competitor firms in Phoenix went up fairly dramatically. And we immediately saw a disadvantage from a recruiting standpoint. At least, we regularly recruit people fresh out of law school to start as younger lawyers. And if your neighbor is paying an extra $30,000 or $40,000 to somebody, it's you can have a great firm, but to someone fresh out of law school with a significant amount of student loan debt, dollars are dollars. So we felt that was, a threat. We also thought there was a threat that some of our, lawyers that we had invested in and that we have hopes for becoming partner would leave to go to some other firms who were offering, significantly more compensation. So, we had to kind of make a decision of, do we want to continue to try to compete in this space, or are we going to kind of go a different way about it? And some firms have chosen a different path. We opted to try to, meet the market where it was financially and raise our salaries. But we also tried to add some value by really kind of making a partnership with the associates. So instead of having exclusively an hours-based bonus program, we rolled out an alternative bonus structure that involves profitability, because, there are some associates who, through no fault of their own, they work on files where the rates are lower. They just aren't as profitable as some other lawyers who perhaps work less hours, but have a much higher rate because of the nature of their practice. So we tried to have a couple different paths there. And that's where the discussion of, kind of really trying to help the associates understand the business aspect of it, because, that they need to understand that, there is an overhead number that we allocate to associates, and that's a significant number. That there are benefits that cost the firm money that are awarded to them. So if we really showed them the way we kind of look at individual partners at our firm, that, there's a profit sheet for each person. You can look at what the numbers collected are and what all the expenses are, and you get a profit number or a deficit number. So, we decided to try to share that information. And this is a program that's fairly new for us. We've only been under it about a month. So I can report back in about a year as to whatever level of success we have with it. But and then we also shifted to having a discretionary bonus program as well, where someone who does great work, but maybe doesn't qualify for the hours-based bonus program or a profit-based bonus program, could still get a bonus if they've, added value and done some of the things that we hope that our younger lawyers will do. That wasn't universally well received by the partners, because there is some sense of, hey, when I was younger, I was working an extra 200 or 300 hours and billing more time. And, why are we paying people more than I made when I first made partner? But I think generally people understand that, you have to invest in the future of your firm. And if you don't, you're not growing, you're dying. And so, I think the recalcitrant people are going to see the benefit of happy lawyers. I think happy lawyers stay longer and are more productive. So, the trick for us is to make sure that there's some buy-in with the associates, because there's sort of two parts. You want the associates to do more work, but you also want the partners to create more work. And so trying to marry those two things has been a little bit of a challenge for our law firm, but I think this system is going to help. And just anecdotally, I have seen, I think, a lot more motivation on the part of associates to try to do more things and to maybe get a little outside of their comfort zone, not from a legal standpoint, but just knock on more doors, maybe try to work for different people that they haven't always talked to. So far, I think that it's going to be a good thing, but I also think it will make the transition from associate to shareholder much less bumpy, because they will have an expectation and a track record of what some of those economic factors look like, what the formulas that we work with look like, and some aspect of how the firm is run. So it won't come as a complete surprise to them. So like I said, we're kind of early in that process, but I'm hopeful that sharing that information will make things go a lot better going forward. So kind of investing in the long run here.
Great. Gelu, how do you see that? Do you see that as something you think your partners will be willing to implement, or not so much?
We also dealt with the rising salaries, remunerations for the law, compensation for lawyers, and being a mid-sized firm, I mean, and we had a traditional approach, like more lenient, I would say. I mean, obviously, if you look at the profit sheets of per associates, probably any reasonable firm would say, look, these guys should be cut off, let loose. We did not do this because we know maybe it's the fault of us as partners not for not bringing sufficient work. It's also an issue of the project they're working on. Sometimes, they're high risk with high reward projects, in which case, if it's just the risk, not the reward, obviously the profit sheet of the particular associate or associates, it's red or it's not green. And but we never we acted somehow counterintuitively, because we knew if we deal properly and gently with the associates, we first of all we create an environment which is healthy. We secure their loyalty, and they're placing their bets with our firm, so they stay with the firm and they progress. We do have plans for some of the associates to get them to be more busy and more active, but it's I agree that there's need for more information to the associates, but sometimes I have the feeling that the more we share, I think some of them will simply be scared by the the implications, the complexity of running the business, and the cost of being a partner in terms of not only financial costs, which are obviously positive, but in terms of the time spent and the time allocated to making the business run properly. And we do have some very good, very skilled associates, which are amazingly good lawyers, but they have no appetite to make the step to become a partner, because they do not want to deal with this headache of being concerned of the well-being of a number of 60 lawyers, 60 and employees. And I'm not judging them; it is normal. They have different priorities. They're probably better than average lawyers in the firm, but their mind is somewhere else. And they will probably, in a few years, they would retire and become a general counsel with a major client of ours. But they don't have the grit and the stamina to want to become a partner. And I'm not blaming them. I'm just surprised. It's the more sometimes I'm not saying that sometimes ignorance is bliss. I'm not saying this, but and obviously the way to educate and train them to make the step to partnership is just to let them understand what it takes in terms of the management skills and management obligations and what you're doing. And in some cases they're happy to be shared this information. In some other cases they realize they just want to do lawyering because they like issues of law. They want to solve issues, to create, deliver projects and get things done, but less the part of managing the firm.
I think one thing that can be helpful regardless of what level of transparency the law firm has with respect to sharing of information, you know, younger lawyers, you know, some firms have a formal mentor program and other firms just kind of have that happen organically with people in their practice groups or things like that. But I would certainly encourage, you know, anybody who hasn't kind of latched on to a couple of more senior attorneys, you know, not just on a work relationship basis, but, you know, take them out to lunch or, you know, get to know them a little bit better and ask them those types of questions about, hey, what's it like when you're a partner? What was it like for you when you made that transition? What, you know, what do I need to be doing? Because, you know, the best source of information about how to be successful, you know, at a law firm that you're working at is going to be looking to the partners who are successful already and what they did to get there. And I think most lawyers are happy to spend the time talking to young lawyers about that. Most lawyers are a little bit egotistical, so you know, getting a lawyer to talk about him or herself is usually not the hardest thing to do. But really taking advantage of that, you know, those types of resources, it's invaluable. I feel like I had excellent mentors at my firm, and they helped me grow as a lawyer, but also helped me understand some of the business aspects of the law and some things that I needed to do to be considered for partner. And I was very grateful for those opportunities. And I'm sure they're at every one of the law firms that the folks on this call, you know, work at.
Yeah, I think that's great. Just as a reminder, everyone, you can jump in the call whenever you want and ask Gelu and Shannon anything comes to mind related to this issue. But following with the plan here, I send you guys a question on if there were any do's or don'ts that come to mind when being a partner. That is there something you like when you first became a partner that you say I shouldn't have done that, or this is something I totally I'm grateful that I did this because that made me more important for the firm or whatever. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I'll start here. I mean, I have a particular situation here answer because which might not be that relevant because like I said, I was working really working hard for 7 years, in fact, with an American law firm. And I returned from the States for my master's degree, and I worked two more years there. And I realized I can do something else in a different context, under different arrangement. I realized I was on the short track of becoming a partner. I was constantly with the law firm. I would have probably waited 2 or 3 more years to get the skills and learn. But essentially, when we set up our own firm, now in retrospect I realized I was horribly unprepared to act as a partner. And I learned by doing this. And what I regret in my years of being an associate with this American firm, I regret for not paying more attention on the management and on the economics of the law firm. Truth be told, back then, 20 years ago, I don't think the firms, American firms, were that transparent. Obviously, it's not like nowadays when they realize, like Shannon's firm, that you need to be more transparent to get people to understand what it takes and what it's involved in the running of the law firm business. And back then I was also very, very fixated, I would say, on working on projects, keeping clients happy, getting new clients. I was ill-advised. I should have spent more time in understanding how these law firms are working and functioning. But the lucky thing is that the group of 4 which set up the firm, we have like complementary skills. And I learned lots of things from my partners, and they learned some things hopefully from me, and this is how we got where we are right now. But I wish I would have had more time to understand the business of a law firm, other than keeping the clients happy and getting the things done in proper time. And this is my regret. It's because it was relatively, I would say, tiresome or difficult at least in the 4 or 5 years. But then, the crisis hit us, and then we had lots of time for regrouping and reconsidering and rearranging how things are run and how we're running the business and the law firm.
I guess I would have a similar perspective. I think that, I started my firm, at least in my mind, with kind of a year behind because I had worked for the judge for the year. The firm didn't see it that way, but I internalized that. And so I made a strenuous effort to work really hard. So I led all the associates of my firm in billable hours every single year that I was an associate. And I think that was too much. Looking back on it now, I would have liked to have had a better appreciation for not just work-life balance. I mean, that too, but some of the things that I didn't do as a younger lawyer that I would have liked to have started earlier is, in my later years, I've been very involved in the community, both the legal community from the form of bar service and things like that, and getting involved in committees, and also, kind of paying the social rent, getting involved with nonprofit organizations or causes that I like. And it's interesting, as an associate, everything was about, how many hours could I get on a timesheet, and how could I keep the clients happy and the partners I'm working with happy. And that did lead to some business for me, and it helped me make partner. But what I have found later is that the ability to develop business and the relationships you have in the community help you a lot more than that, because when you become a partner, in some ways, there are people that you continue to work with, and if you develop good relationships, you'll do that. But the marketplace changes a little bit. You're no longer an associate. You're somewhat in competition with your other partners at a lot of law firms, including mine. And so, there's only so much work, and there's also there's some pressure to provide work to associates. So when you graduate from the ranks of an associate to a partner, you're no longer in the class of people that partners are expected to give work to. So you have to kind of come up with other ways. And some ways you can do that is to become valuable or to develop an expertise in a subject or things like that. But the most comfortable thing for a shareholder or a partner to do is to have relationships such that they start developing their own set of business and their own clients. And for me, I was very surprised to see that things I had done really because I just wanted to feel more balanced in my life actually resulted in more business coming in. And so I think, like, with the benefit of hindsight, I would have started having more community involvement, both in the legal and the social community, earlier in my career. I started getting involved in some nonprofit work kind of toward the end of my associate tenure, but if I could do it over again, I would get on a board, of something I liked, a cause I liked, right away, because you start developing relationships with other professionals, and it just leads to good things in the community. So, I think it is a little bit, associates are instructed that they need to perform, and they need to do good work, and they need to bill hours, and that's all true, but there's a whole lot more to it than that. And I think if you kind of get involved in the world around you, you really can add a lot of value to your law firm, because at the end of the day, what you want to be is someone that your partners are proud to invite and say, gosh, we have to have this person be a partner because they're out there in the community, they're doing good things. So I think, maybe that's a lesson that you learn through experience, but I would certainly encourage, everybody on this call to the extent you're not already involved in that. And, if you're showing up for this call, you probably are already involved in the community. You're probably a go-getter. But I think, finding a passion that you like, that is, something that you can do that doesn't necessarily involve your legal skills, but gets you involved in the community around you, is always going to be a good thing for you and for the law firm.
Yeah, if I may add something to Shannon's, I mean, we do advise or urge our associates to to work in this ONGs and lobbying, like AIM Chamber, Commerce, and because they get exposure, they get to know businesses, they get to know their peers, and this pays off because somehow they realize after 1 or 2 years that they're making a difference and showing leadership on those particular aspects, whether they're pure legal or non-legal issues. This pays out because they get the network and their recognition, they get the recognition, and sometimes these things evolve into client leads or even client projects. So this helps a lot, not only in terms of also in terms of personal branding, to put it like this, but also in terms of professional development and professional and capability to be able to to secure or to land new clients.
Okay, that is great. Yeah, I think relationships are very important to make a good partner if you ever become a partner. I think one thing that we maybe have not been discussing is the actual business of law and how it looks like. So I was wondering how firm plans for upcoming years and beyond. So how is that planning, or how do you work on the planning in your firm, and what is the most important thing when having those meetings for the next years, and what will the firm do, and so on? If you can share your insights on that, that would be great.
Well, it very much depends on the size of the firm, and probably, and also very much depends on the environment of the firm, the local legal culture, and the maturity of the legal market. For us, I think probably if I would compare our planning with the Shannon's firm planning, will be deemed to be short-sighted, because we plan 1 or 2 years in advance, and our planning simply starts from the previous year. We look what went good, what went wrong. We look over the marketing overhead, HR, and all the other cost expenses. We try to figure out the impact of new legislation, how we were able to piggyback on this, and then to monetize this new changes in the legislation and new trends. And what we do, we look over the performance of the lawyers. We'll try to figure out what would be their if they only increase their billable hours per year, what would be the new target billable hours, and then this is how we create a plan and a budget. So this is not very sophisticated, but again, this happens because the Romanian market is not very mature in terms of the legal market, I mean, and it's also needed to have only one year in advance, because the legal context is very fluid. We have the laws they keep changing them in terms of, especially in tax matters, especially tax matters are changed all the time. So there's lots of there's a certain incoming stream of work which simply deals with how to help the clients to be better to deal with the new challenges of new legislation, new laws and rules. So with the changes in the law, it's difficult to forecast for 3 or 4 years in advance. So we do it from one year to the other. This is how we essentially we work, and we start from bottom to top. Look over the existing costs, existing revenues, and then try to anticipate what's going to happen and how it should, improve, refine, streamline our operation. This is in a nutshell what to do in terms of business planning.
We kind of track that pretty closely in Phoenix, at least at our law firm. Our management committee is fairly centralized. So, we have a 6-person management committee that essentially runs the law firm. And there are a couple of other committees that we will have for recruiting and, associate reviews and technology and a few other things. But for the most part, the management committee makes most of those decisions. And it is very hard to predict year to year what that market is going to look like. Especially, Phoenix it's interesting right now. Real estate has been booming for the last several years. Some people say we're due for a correction, and that will definitely impact work. Other people say no, it's a few years out in Phoenix. So it's really hard to do that. What we have done is try to stay fairly agile so that we can adapt to conditions a little bit more on the fly. During the pandemic, like a lot of law firms, we took some austerity measures where we were very committed to not laying off staff if we could avoid it. And so we rolled back lawyer salaries to some extent, with the idea that if things worked out the way we hoped, that they would be restored, and they were. But we had to make those adjustments right away, and that's not something I think anybody could have planned for 3 or 4 years out as part of a strategic plan or something like that. But we do have some forward-looking planning in the sense of we have sort of resisted the idea of growing beyond client needs. We don't have a plan to become a regional law firm or a national law firm. We've resisted those plans. So that issue comes up from time to time. But really where we try to look at is, we want to remain a full service firm. And so, do we have some practice groups where, maybe that group hasn't built a team and it's really just one or two people who are getting upwards in years, and maybe they aren't going to keep practicing. So we start looking to shore up any areas where we might be losing lawyers. We're always trying to grow with good quality lawyers, but not for the sake of growth. And so, we do look at that. And as it ties into the business aspect of it, one area that always sort of forces that issue is, when your lease is up on your building, if you have 3 floors, but only need 2, you got to make a decision. Are you going to go with 2 floors and hope that you stay lean and mean, or do you want to get back to where you need 3 floors? And there's a 10-year commitment. So how do you decide to plan on that? And so those things are things you have to think about. But for us anyway, it's really kind of come down to, we want costs to go lower. We want overhead to go lower because, a big overhead number makes it very hard to recruit young and lateral attorneys. So, we're always trying to watch that, but, that's a function of expenses divided by the number of attorneys who are billing hours. So, those are things that are just always hard, but you do try to, the thing we've done with our associates lately, I think will help us from a recruiting standpoint. So we do try to look at how can we become more competitive, in terms of younger lawyers, but also lateral hires. But there was a great presentation, I think 2 years ago at the AGM. Maybe it was 3 years ago. I lose track. The pandemic has just muddled my brain for time. But where Kurt and Sodashenko's firm had hired a strategic planner for the law firm who had kind of laid out a strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats analysis, and gone through that exercise. My firm did that a long time ago, and it really didn't spin off. But I think it's a good idea to have some idea of where you want to be and who you want to be. But like Gelu said, it's really hard to know what that looks like year to year because it's such a volatile market. I felt like that was a lot of talking to not answer the question, but hopefully it gives some perspective.
Oh yeah, I think the perspective we're getting in this call is great. I don't know if anyone has a question or would like to jump in the call, because we only have 9 minutes and our speakers have meetings, as I guess many of you do. So if you want to ask something, this is the time.
Also, I have a question, and it relates to what was discussed previously about transparency. Shannon, you took the step to immediately be completely transparent. Have you discussed or thought about to make it partially transparent? So, would you provide the math how and which percentages are spent on overhead, on recruitment, etc., but not to share all the figures of the firm?
So what we do, it's interesting because we now are being transparent with our associates as it relates to their compensation structure. Everybody knows what a starting associate makes because that's published knowledge. But then what each individual attorney makes at our firm is not public. So we have a closed compensation structure, but so when I said that we're sharing those numbers and profitability, the partners at the firm see the numbers for all the associates every month. The associates at the firm will see where they rank, both in terms of hours and collections on a numerical basis, but not the actual numbers other than their own numbers. But the difference now is that we are sharing with them not just what their hours and their collections are, we're also helping them understand that, our overhead allocation for an associate, this year is $150,000 or something like that, and that includes, here's what goes into that number. It's your share of the expenses, the insurance, and all these different things, real estate. And then we also help them understand, here are the direct employee costs. Here's what it costs the firm for, your health insurance, for your benefits, for the payroll taxes. the profit sharing contribution. So they really get on a fairly granular basis all the different numbers that goes into that. And I think it's helpful for them to understand that, because, you know, if your neighbor firms are saying, okay, yeah, we're going to pay you an extra $10,000, and you look at those costs and you think to myself, okay, I'm halfway through the year and I'm trending on a deficit. You know, it's a lot easier to anticipate where the firm is going to have some concern or something about that if you know kind of going in what we know, which is that, you know, you're not breaking even yet or something. So, you know, that we didn't get a lot of resistance to the idea of sharing that information with the associates. I think it was generally thought to be a good idea, so that they understood that there are real numbers that are associated with what they do and how the business runs.
Okay, yeah, I thought it might also be some sort of recruitment tool to be as transparent, to see exactly which amount you would earn in which specific step of associate you are, or which you would make when you go through the full associate program and become a partner.
It is going to be helpful in that. In fact, even the associates, now that we rolled this out, I mean, it's very easy to pencil in a number, because we have, you know, we know what % of the hours they're going to get if they are qualified for an hours-based bonus. On the profit side, we have essentially a profit sharing bonus where they know, you know, if they meet these numbers, here's what their bonus is going to be. And so it is very helpful that way, because, you know, someone that's important to can really pencil that out. We also did decide to have associates participate in our origination credit program, so that if an associate does bring a client to the firm, they share in the collections from that client, pretty much on the same basis that the shareholders do. And it didn't seem like there was any good reason not to do that, really. I mean, you know, if you want to incentivize younger lawyers to bring in clients as well. So, you know, I do think from a recruiting standpoint, these things will be very helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think we've reached the time, so I really appreciate the time Gelu and Shannon took to share their insights with us. And I think this was a great first Emerging Leaders meeting, and hope to see you sometime soon in person or online again. So thank you very much. And for the Emerging Leaders, please feel free to contact me or to contact Vincent or Lori or Teresa for any future meetings.
Also, if anybody has any follow-up questions they didn't get to ask today, feel free to email us too. Be happy to talk offline.
Great.
Same here.
Thank you.